Welcome back, guys. In this episode, I want to jump into some missed potentials and erosions on your life. See, most men don't lose their potential in a dramatic collapse. They lose it in what they tolerate, in toleration. And what I want to cover today is a couple different things. One of them is, Dad came down over the weekend and we worked on the truck. Truck needed some TLC. And so the first thing, one of the things that we did was wheel hub. And it was funny because wheel hubs, started hearing a little bit of a noise. And I was like, I think that might be like a wheel bearing. And drove forward a little bit and some other things happened. And I was like, well, time to do it, right? Time to get it done. And it was I always love side-by-side pictures. So if you saw on Facebook or on Instagram, you saw the side-by-side photo. And I always love before and after pictures because what it does is it shows you what it gives you a very clear comparison versus when you feel the erosion, the nonstop wear and tear. It's hard to have that appreciation. You don't notice that degradation day by day. You only see it whenever it's right next to something new. So over time, I like to reflect back on how I live my life, and one of the things that I noticed or really started to dissect was the most dangerous losses in your life are the ones that you don't feel happening. And it was like, whoa, like that came into my brain when I saw those pictures because you look at the old one and it didn't look initially like at first glance you look at it and go, okay, so it's got some rust on it, it's not a big deal. And then the more I started looking at it, and I started seeing that there was a lot of grease that had broken the seal. So it's a closed system, which means that the grease is sort of put in at manufacturing and then sealed. So it's a fully closed loop system. It's not like you have to add any grease. It's like whatever grease is in there, like that's just it. But when the seal breaks down or there's a tear in it or just anything happens, well, then the grease leaks out. Well, when the grease leaks out, then that means that you're putting more load and heating up that bearing a lot more than it needs to, and it wears out a lot faster, right? Bearings like to stay nice and cold. Heating them up, heat then can overwork the metal and get things soft, and it's just a bad thing, right? The engineering part kind of takes off in me. But to me, it was like, oh my gosh, I really started looking at it, and I was like, okay, their seal is broken here, and then I start doing a sound test, and I was like, wow, like both of them sound the same. You can start to hear some, I want to say grinding because that was like late stages of a bad wheel bearing, but you could hear some rubbing. Like it was definitely making noise versus the new ones. You could spin it and heard absolutely nothing. Brand new shiny metal, it was just new, which you would hope for. But it really started to bring into question or bring into my mind that's the things that, like that's life happening to us every single day is our lives, whether that's our relationships or our health, is like that wheel bearing. And if a seal gets broken and we start to just keep going through the motions, we heat up and we wear out and some grease comes out. I don't know what that analogy is directly related, but we start feeling that, and then before we know it, we can have a big catastrophic issue, or we just always end up in not being able to be at our highest potential. And the interesting thing with that is, well, then the question that came to me was, well, then what question or how do I get to arriving to that piece without ever like going through the exercises? Like, how do I know which areas am I tolerating or what areas have I maybe neglected that looking at that, and if I were to put in my potential right next to it as a side-by-side picture, I would notice, hey, I'm really far from where I needed to be. And I think one thing that helps me with that is this binary thinking, where you are either tolerating that erosion or it's time to or restore it back to, what alignment is, like whatever that good thing is, source of truth, like whatever that like good is. Entitlement is the word that I was thinking of. And because we can always rationalize really interesting. And the reason why, I always try to think about it of like, okay, what's the important thing? And then why does this matter now? And the reason why this matters now is we can always talk about the illusion of time. Time is the most precious thing that all of us have, because people who, the billionaires and the people who have 2 cents to their name all still have some amount of time. Arguably we can say theoretically, will we get to the point where money can essentially buy back our time because we can reverse aging and do all that stuff? Sure, but when you decouple that, time is the thing that we're all trying to fight. And what I've also noticed is in energy leadership, when I got certified as a coach, went through this training, and it was talking about energy leadership. And one of the things that I found was level 3 talks about it's like the glass ceiling energy. And what I mean by that is that you're not miserable, but you're also not inspired. You're just in this fine position. And fine is really dangerous. It's like a hidden danger because it's the fine that doesn't really push you. Fine doesn't necessarily want to go build a legacy. Fine just creates this it moments later in our life. We don't know it until later because hindsight, everything becomes clear, right? Hindsight's always 20/20. We always heard that. And that's because nothing can make sense when you're in it, but then when you go back and you look at it, you go, now that makes sense. Okay, I see now. I wasn't showing up as much as I thought. Like, I thought maybe I was pushing 110% back then, but I was just pushing really hard, but I was working a lot harder than I had to. And so this level 3, this like glass ceiling energy is really tricky because we rationalize. And if you go back an episode or two when I was talking about confirmation bias, if you rationalize to yourself and you say, hey, everything is fine, you will then look for all the areas of why you're right, why it is fine, why this is just okay. Well, I could be living better, I could be living worse, but hey, you know what? I'm doing just fine, so I just need to be happy with it. And we miss the ultimate fulfillment of what our potential is. Just like if I were to give you $100, would you be happy? And you'd say, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I could be happy. But what if I was also prepared to give you $1 million? Would that same $100 be okay? Or you're just rationalizing why the $100 is okay because you didn't know what was possible. You maybe thought what was probable, but you never thought what was possible. And so that's why it's so tricky, is because our brain always thinks around the world of what's probable, and then we set that what we think is, quote, nice, fine, okay, acceptable, what we are willing to tolerate, and then we look for the confirmation bias in order to make ourselves true in that, versus challenging and saying, hey, maybe I have a good relationship, but could I have an even better relationship? Could I potentially think about what could be even better? Like relationship with Amber. Could my relationship with Amber be even better? Absolutely. Doesn't mean that my relationship is bad with Amber. It just means that there's always room to improvement. Like, I love her. We have the best relationship that I feel like I've ever had in my entire life. But that doesn't mean that we can't go still be better. We can't go strive to find other ways that I could support her and she could support me, and other ways that we could go enjoy our unique, togetherness. So it's all part of that awareness. So again, you can't change that in which you aren't aware of. But also, you can't grieve potential that you never allowed yourself to see. And that's a very interesting thing, because when you start to look at the fact that you're not allowing yourself, you've got these blinders on because the world is just fine the way that you see it, well, then you're never allowing yourself to see maybe what's possible. You're only showing yourself what's probable, which is within, some normal allowing that you can go see, okay? And the other thing when I start to talk about, okay, that's what's important, but then what's at stake? Like, what if you get this wrong? What does that really mean? And I really started to reflect on this, and it's like there's 3 areas that I wanted to cover. One of them are things, one of them is yourself, and the other one is relationships. So for the things category, it's like mechanical erosion compounds, right? Things only get worse. It just, like, if you leave your house dirty for a week, it's not going to get clean overnight. It's just going to continue to keep getting worse. The messes start to get sticky, and then the stickiness attracts dirt, and then the dirt starts to build mold, and it continuously compounds. And that little bit of negligence or like neglecting something becomes a very expensive repair later. And in some ways, we start to normalize that dysfunction. And so, for me, secret time is I was neglecting things with the truck. I've had this truck, 2016 GMC Sierra, love that truck to death, but it had this really bad transmission clunk. It would really hard shift 1 to 2, and I would go to a stop sign, and all of a sudden it would just lurch. And I was like, well, that's not normal. That's not okay. But I lived with it for 6 years because I didn't know. I knew I didn't want it, but I didn't know how to necessarily go fix it. And everybody that I talked to never had good answers. I went down a whole bunch of rabbit holes, but I never quite got to root cause and fixed it until now. And so, but it was in that moment where now driving it, like I want to share this with you because this is real, real time, real life, is driving the truck now without having to worry and embrace for when I come to a stop that it's going to want to lurch or, it's taking off and then worry that it's going to really hard shift is incredible. And, a week ago, I was living with that. A week ago, I was tightening my stomach every time. And maybe for you, it might look like I'm walking on eggshells and that same pit in your stomach of, I don't want to offend the person. I don't want to upset things. And who knows what could end up with this. Or maybe it's walking on eggshells around a job that you are okay at, but you're not really excited, not really passionate about. It's all those things that we just neglect over time, and it just takes its toll. It doesn't only take its toll on those around us, but it also takes a toll on us and how we show up. And we just normalize why what it is that we're dealing with is okay. So the second category is yourself. And so, I talk a lot about that level 3 energy that we just covered. You rationalize, you slowly detach from those ambitions, from that purpose. You start making excuses of why it's not possible for you. And you never really reach that strength. You never really reach that level of wealth. You never really reach that level of fulfillment. It's not because you can't. It's because you settled. And sometimes like this hurts. This is a very hard thing to hear. And I go back to myself, the amount of relationships that I had been in before Amber, that I kept showing up and finding the relationships that I didn't want, but I never really understood what I did want. And that's a whole other separate story. But then it's like, if I just said pencils down and I just settled with the fact that this is the best relationship that I can get because of whatever, I never would have found Amber, and I never would have been able to have Lily and think about, all the things around being a fatherhood. So for you in your life, I don't know what that looks like. There might be things, there might be relationships, you might not be where you want to make enough money. Recognize that wherever you feel there's a gap, lean into that. Don't shy away from it, because those gaps and where you feel like you're not showing up as much as what you'd like to be, there's a small part of you that's trying to reach out to you that says, hey, this isn't normal. Don't allow this to settle. Don't normalize where we're at, because there's a lot more left for you to go and live. Don't settle here. Just keep going. Go find the right people to get around. Go have the conversations that you might not know how to have them yet, and that's okay. But if you show up and just continue to keep trying, then you're going to find the right solution in there in order to move yourself forward. Just like with that transmission. Sooner or later, I finally got really serious and I went through all the available things of what could be going on, and I isolated it and I finally fixed it. And it's such a big relief when now all of a sudden I can say, hey, I found root cause and I fixed it. But there were the past 6 years, countless times where I was this close to say, you know what? Screw it, I'll just sell the truck and go buy a different truck. But I just loved everything about it. I loved the way it was set up. I loved the way that it looked. I love just all the things. I loved the whole story behind how we got the truck. All of it. But I just couldn't figure out how to get rid of the thing that was causing me the most pain until I really made it an area of focus. And when I really made it an area of focus and I doubled down on it, I could then start to work through, okay, how do I go change every little thing and try to nip and tuck and learn from somebody and go reach out and have humbleness to go look like an idiot in front of a mechanic that says, I don't know what's going on, please help me. And a lot of times it ended in failed conversations, in a lot of dead ends. But if you continue to keep pushing, sooner or later you're going to take away all the reasons why it's not working, and then you'll find the reason that it will. Okay? And that's a really great place to be in, and something that I hope that each and every one of you gets to experience, because it truly is a really cool feeling. The third thing is around relationships. And you always assume within relationships that there will be more time, and that strain, that uncomfortableness, the pit in your stomach, the eggshells becomes normal, and it's not. And it's always funny when you see two people come together and both of them are kind of on their healing journey, and they will do something. Maybe it'll be like the guy. I just had a client share this, it was pure awesomeness that I just was like, man, like this is the essence of life. He went to go travel to see this girl that he's seeing, and he's from out of town, so he flew to go see her. And then all of a sudden, she was she made food for him. And he's like, no, like, you don't have to go through trouble. You don't have to go through anything. And it's so funny because for him, he never imagined a world that somebody would care enough for him to make sure that he's taken care of. He's normalized the don't treat me nice. Because I've had a lot of relationships that I was not the one that treated nice. I had to take care of somebody else, but nobody ever took care of me. And it really comes to light when two people come together and you see they'll say, no, don't make me a big deal, or like, oh my gosh, please don't do that. That's totally not necessary. That's not them. That's a lot of times spawning out of their insecurities about the trauma that they've pulled from previous relationships. And what a wonderful feeling that you can go help ease that trauma. And likewise, when you go find the right people, they can start to ease your traumas. And then all of a sudden you start building these really cool relationships that are built on actual love and unconditional love, and unconditional servant trying to serve each other. And it's just a really, really cool thing. And the other precursor to that is, pride that replaces curiosity. So if you show up with a sense of pride, then you won't ever get to that point of being curious to be able to go try to find how to make that relationship better. And so this gets into the relationship part of like the personal stories I want to share. Is my dad and I, so my dad came down, helped me with the truck. But my dad and I we always had a strained relationship because we would always butt heads in my teens and my 20s. It just always, a father and his son, and we were always trying to outcompete each other. And he didn't know how to articulate and have conversations, and neither did I. And so it would ultimately end in two people yelling at each other, and we would butt heads, and nothing would ever get done. It would take us way longer on the farm to get anything done, even though it should have been super easy and simple. And as I grew up, and now as I see as a father to my kids, and now I see, okay, what dad must have been looking at me through, I see a lot of his intent through loving eyes instead of this competition that we had. And there was a lot of growth this weekend. Like, it was really cool to be able to problem solve on something that neither one of us, we ran into some things like going into the transmission. We ran into some situations neither one of us knew how to handle it. But we showed up and we go, I don't know how to handle this. Maybe we try this. I don't know if it's going to work. What do you think? I don't know. Let's try it. I agree. You think this is the right tool? I would go with this tool. Okay, yeah, I could see how you go with that tool. But it was just this, we were both trying to pour in to go solve the problem. And it just was a really, really cool thing. And so one thing that dudes get right, which is we build relationships when we're shoulder to shoulder, going and doing something together. But then the other thing is when we are trying to be servants to each other and we're trying to actually help each other and not try to, like, hey, I'll solve this and show you how cool I am or how much I know. And it was a really, really cool thing. And I remember, there were some things. I didn't spend a lot of time with Lily or Amber this weekend because my dad was in town and we were out in the shop working on a whole bunch of stuff. And I came in and tried to make sure, like, hey, Amber, like, are you okay? Just want to make sure, like, I know I'm not being around. And she goes, babe, this is great. You need to have this time with your dad. Your dad's getting older. And you guys are getting to this point where you're really able to mesh and have that relationship that you told me that you've always wanted to have with your dad. And so it, again, tied that back in that says time isn't infinite. Like, I know I'm super blessed and I'm super thankful to have my dad and mom still alive and the ability to still do a lot of stuff with them. I know they're not going to be around forever, which is also why it's really, I want to make sure that the relationships that I do have, I'm making them the best relationships that I can possibly be, help to serve them, figuring out ways and articulating, setting boundaries, how to have them help me, and just really have this as a like win-win situation. And so, like, that whole thing also was making sure that you pour into those relationships and don't let things go unsaid for too long. Realize that, hey, we made some mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody says stuff that they wish they could go back and take back. Everyone says things that they are humiliated and they don't necessarily know how to say, I'm humiliated and I wish I never said it and I'm sorry. It could be something as simple as that. So don't let the regret stop you from, or don't let the guilt or the shame or any of those emotions stop you from showing up in these relationships, because regret doesn't show up when something breaks. It shows up when you realize you tolerated something for too long. And that's also the hard piece, that when you are living in this cycle where, like, going back to that wheel bearing analogy, when you're living in that and your wheel bearing is just getting a little bit worse, a little bit worse, a little bit worse, and you don't understand it until you see a brand new one and see, wait, that's what it's supposed to look like, not this seeping, grease-filled thing that looks like, it's got some slop in it and, she's wore out. It's when you realize that you tolerated for something too long. And that's why it's so hard. And that's why anytime that you talk to people that are generations ahead of you, they will always tell you all the things that they tolerated for too long. And they're trying to urge that message to you that says, hey, don't tolerate things for too long. That relationship that you feel stuck in, go fix it. That, career issue that you're struggling with, go solve that. The health that you're struggling with, the addiction that you can't quite seem to kick, like, go address it, resolve that. Don't tolerate that for too long, because there'll be a point where that too long just becomes regret, and then that regret can sometimes mean you don't ever get a second chance at that. People who have a heart attack look back and go, man, I wish I would have started to eat better earlier. Those people who lost the relationship wish that they could go back and say and take back some of the hurtful things that they said. You find examples of this all over the place. So don't let those things stop you from showing up even better in these relationships and going after the things that you ultimately want in life, because we're all going to face this. This isn't like, well, this applies to some people, but this doesn't apply to others. This applies to everyone. You will have to wrestle with what you think your purpose is at some point. You will have to wrestle with, do you think that what you lived and how you showed up and how you're living your life was good enough? Everyone's going to have to face into that music at some point. And so if you can get a head start on it and start to chip away at it and find different ways that you could improve in order to make your life better, the lives around you better, the more that you're going to be able to look back on that life and say, honestly, I gave it truly my all. I constantly tried to look for areas, tried to improve it. I did what I could, and I truly meant that. Not, well, I did the best I could, and then I really suffered, and I really wish I would have done this, and I really wish I would have done that, and all that regret comes in. So when I want to go through this now is this framework where there's really three domains: what you tolerate in things, what you tolerate in yourself, and then what you tolerate in your relationships. So the things that I tolerated, we talked about the clunk in the transmission, the hard shift. It still runs, right? I've seen I've seen a lot of trucks where guys are like, she still runs. She's smoking, popping, on the verge of just exploding, and probably only needs like 2 parts, and she'd be a lot in a lot better of a shape, But if you delay, when you delay, and it goes from the world of being manageable to unimaginable. So the question on the things in your life is this aligned or has it eroded? If you were to go take a new version and compare it to what you're doing right now, and this could be your relationship, this could be the things in your house, this could be your cars, this could be your tractors, this could be any of the things that you have in your life. If you were to have a brand new one next to it, is it still aligned to the best of its ability? Like, I understand, even like the truck. 2016 truck is not a 2026 truck. I understand that. But a 2026 truck in the way that the 2020 or the 2016 truck was, is still being taken care of in that well, right? Is it still aligned in that, or is she got some bent rims and the tailpipe is hanging on the ground or whatever? What you tolerate in yourself, that level 3 energy, which is you're rationalizing, you're justifying, you're comparing downward. It's always easy to compare downward. Well, I'm a lot better than the guy that doesn't have an arm. And the guy that doesn't have an arm looks at the person that doesn't have two arms and says, well, I'm much better than that guy. And the guy that doesn't have two arms looks at the guy who doesn't have a head and he goes, well, I at least have a head. When we rationalize downward, it's easy to say, well, we're a lot better than where we could be. But it's another thing that says, but what if I could be a lot more? What if I could go and do something better? What if I could go see and be a much more fulfilling father, a much more present father, a much more present husband, a much more present leader in the community, much better coworker to just check in with the people that you work with that says, hey, are you okay and are you safe? Could be something as simple as that. So in that one, that whole, like, what you tolerate in yourself always comes from awareness. You got to be aware, then you have to take ownership, and then from the ownership, then you can turn into some type of a movement, okay? Your relationships that you have with others, how many of those old narratives, how much is that old ego, how much is that is maybe misinterpreted intent, right? I thought Dad was trying to prove how smart he was maybe to me, and that was the cause of the butting of heads, versus he was trying to help me because he just wants to see me succeed. And his love language is acts of service. So if he did it for me, then that meant that he loved me, versus I wanted to learn how to do it because I love learning. And I knew if I just had it done for me, well, then I could never do it on my own. And that was a big miss for me. And so, again, you have this intent on both sides, the intent from the other person to you and the intent from you to the other person. And some of that could be just misinterpreted. There's a lot of pride masquerading around as strength, especially in guys, where, we think that we're consuming masculinity, which is if I have a bigger truck and eat more or lift more or do all these things, that then, like, I'm a man, versus being the true leader that doesn't care about how much is being consumed, but it's how much they can help and serve the other people in their life, okay? And so, again, this whole shift with my dad this whole past weekend were a lot of different learnings in there that I could never have appreciated until I went through all the journey of what I had, but I'm trying to do a better job of articulating all of that so that you can see. Maybe you don't have to go through all the same stuff that I did, but you can take some of those bits and pieces, apply it to your own life, and actually get the results a lot sooner without having to go through as much trauma. Make sense? So you don't have to know what you want yet, but you must stop tolerating that in which you don't want. Because it's usually a lot easier to find about the things that you don't want than as far as the things that you do want. But just like how Sherlock Holmes solved some cases, he took out all the reasons of how a murder couldn't have happened to find the only missing piece, which was that's how it did happen. So you may not know what you want yet, but you can start to take away all the things that you don't want have happen, so that you can start to narrow in on what success does look like for you. Okay. Now, anytime that we talk about all this stuff, I always like to talk about what's going to be the resistance, what are going to be the internal voices. It's almost like when you go into battle and someone says, hey, Be ready for the sniper that's around that corner. If you know where all the resistances and where all the internal voices and where all the bad guys are, it makes anything a lot easier to navigate. And so what that looks like in here is hearing that voice that says, hey, it's not that bad. You could have it a lot worse. Because that then says, hey, just be cool. Like, your living situation, she beats me. Well, it's okay. It could be worse. She could stab me. Like, you can always rationalize down. You can always envision a more worst case scenario to live in. But is that where you want to live, or do you want to live in what could be an even better situation that could allow you to live a much more fulfilling life? The next one is, I'll deal with that later. Well, we always think we're going to have more time later in life, and we never do. Go talk to those people. Go talk to the people that are, 10, 15 years older than you. They've never found time. It's not like they were like, well, I turned 45, and then all of a sudden I had all the time in the world, so now I get to go do all those things. Because 9 times out of 10, what they'll do is when they finally do have time in their 60s and 70s, they'll say, I don't have the strength, I don't have the health, I don't have the endurance, I don't have all these other things. So I have the time, but I literally don't have anything else that I actually needed to go make it work. I wish I would have done it when I had more energy. I wish I would have done it when I was able to go travel. Like, I'd love to go see the world. I'll see it when I'm later. Well, you can, but then usually you can't go walk into the mountains and go on these extravagant heights to see these beautiful things out west. You can't go and maybe walk around Venice that doesn't have public transportation. It has boats, but it doesn't have, you still have to do a lot of walking in Europe. So those types of things, it's not necessarily, I'll just deal with it later. That's an easy rationalization that says, hey, don't worry about it now. Worry about it at some other time. But that turns into never becoming true. So it's a lie. It's just like snooze button. Oh, if I hit the snooze button, I'll feel better. Never happens, people. I've woken up with my alarm and I've hit the snooze button, and every single time I always feel worse with the snooze button. No matter how many times I hit it, I feel worse and worse and worse. And then I go, I wish I would have just got up when my alarm went off, because now I got really horrible sleep for half hour, 45 minutes, however many times I hit the snooze button. And now I've lost all of that to be able to go and maybe do some Bible reading in the morning, or, just do some stretching, or maybe some breath work, or do something for me, right? You lose out on that opportunity. There's an opportunity cost present with that. Don't listen to the voice that says it still works, right? Just like I'll go back to like the truck transmission. It could be applied to everything. It could be the truck transmission, could be your self-limiting on what you think is probable versus possible, and it could be the relationship with my dad. It still worked. He was still my dad. I was still a son. But I knew that one day I was going to have to live a life without him in it. And I didn't want to be on that side of the world realizing, I really wish I would have just sat down. How hard would it have been for me to just sit down and be like, Dad, I just want a better relationship with you. And knowing that thought and those voices could be present made me really question it and say, if I have that thought now, why wouldn't I act on it now? Why would I wait till later and then have the regret of not being able to take action on the things that I thought of today? So just because it works doesn't mean that it's optimal. So just because your truck still works, just because your relationships are barely holding it together, just because you're barely holding on to the job, whatever the thing is that it still, quote, works, don't just let that settle. Look for areas to go improve it, because when you improve it, it's going to work a lot better. And when it works a lot better, you're going to get a lot more happiness and fulfillment out of it. Okay. This is just how he is. This is just how I am. This is just what the situation is. This is just how, like, finish the rest of the sentence. That's normalizing. It's taking what's the whole world of what's possible and saying, nope, let's put a glass dome on this guy and say, hey, you can only jump to whatever you can. It's a really, really cool exercise, science experiment that they took crickets and they let the cricket jump, and they measured how high it could jump, and it was whatever it was, like 18 inches, 2 feet, or whatever it was, right? He could jump that high. Then they put the cricket underneath a glass like cup. And so, that may have been only like 8 or 9 inches. It jumped and it would hit its head. And it would try to jump again, and it would hit its head. And it did it 3 or 4 times until all of a sudden it realized, okay, I can jump 8 inches and basically just touch the glass ceiling, but I'm not going to smash my head into the glass. Then when they took the glass away, that cricket only jumped 8 inches. It never reached the potential of the 18 to 24 inches of what a cricket could jump. And that study always resonates with me because I see so many guys in the world that are literally jumping the 8 inches in their life. And there's so much more that they can give. They're so much more capable. There's so much happiness, fulfillment, like all of the things. Their life could be so much better. But yet they rationalize to themselves that it's only that same 8 inches so I don't smash my head. I don't get hurt too bad. I'm not going to put myself out there and get hurt or humiliated. And all those things are limitations, that glass that you're jumping on. So it may feel cozy, it may feel safe, but it truly kills that expansion. Think about that cricket next time you're rationalizing to yourself, okay? So now I want to spend the last little bit here talking about some practical applications, because I'm always a firm believer that I like to talk about theory, but I'm always big on, well, how do I turn this into real applications, execution, go out there and take some bit of information and turn it into some reality this week, okay? So first thing is identify one toleration. Like, go throughout your whole life. What is one thing that you've been normalizing? Is it your body? Like, we're middle or beginning of March right now, so is your body in the best shape, or could it be better? Is it something in your work? Are you maybe operating at like a C average at work, and if you maybe applied yourself with a B or an A, maybe you get that promotion, and it starts to feed that flywheel of good returns in your life. It could be in your marriage. Is your marriage, if you imagine the marriage of your relationship, could be any relationship, but imagine that relationship back to when it started. Is that still, would it look the same? Like that hub, that wheel hub to your marriage. If you went back on your wedding day, is that marriage still the same? Now I get, everyone's going to say, well, Eric, but relationships change. They change and evolve, hopefully for the better. But if there are areas of your relationship that it's not as good, like you're seeing grease coming out the seams and it's rusty and torn apart, that's not just how marriage works. There might be some issues, but that doesn't mean that the spunk and the fun and the enjoyment and the laughter and the caring for each other and the servant leadership that you both are giving to each other that you're pouring in isn't still there like it was on your marriage day or on your wedding day. Same thing with your parents. Is that relationship strained? Is it as good as what it could be? And honestly, a lot of times, because of that, you may not know what success looks like. Like for me, the relationship with my dad, like quick side story, was this was my only dad. So for me, that's the only relationship that I knew. But then I started seeing other guys and their dads, and some relationships were just really close. They were really close with their dad. They were able to call him up and talk about anything, problem solve stuff together. And I was like, oh, you can have that kind of relationship with your dad? And so that caused me to, again, my own thing that says, okay, I operated from the world of what's probable to now what's possible. And I went to work and tried to change it. And now I get to experience the rest of my life with him, that I get to have a really strong, cool relationship. So very, very much, appreciate and cherish that. Step 2 is timeline it. Okay, if you take this, whatever it is, whatever your one thing that you are saying I'm tolerating, if you took that, and let's say it's your body, and let's say it's, my gap is really 15 pounds. I'm 15 pounds heavier than what I was last summer, or maybe 10 years ago, or whatever that it is. If nothing changes for 3 months, so we're at beginning of March, so if that's March, April, May, so end of May, beginning of June, if you're still that 15 pounds heavier, what happens? What happens if you're still that same weight a year from now? What happens if you're still that same weight 5 years from now? What does that mean? Does it mean anything to you? And if the answer is, well, it doesn't really mean anything to me, then is that a toleration in and of itself? Maybe. So then the last thing, step 3, is, you need to take some type of an action. Doesn't mean that you have to go hog wild and go overhaul something. Doesn't mean you have to go make this large transformation. Just one move. Maybe it's schedule that repair. Maybe it's go pick up the room. Maybe it's go fold the laundry. It might be starting that one workout. Maybe it's making that call or having that one conversation with that person. You don't fix your whole life today. You stop tolerating one thing. And that one thing turns into an action. And then that action builds into another action. And then that action builds into another action. And before you know it, your entire life is radically different than where you started. So it's not this whole, it looks like this big overhaul, but that's on the macro scale. On the micro scale, all it is just a series of decisions. It's just one single decision, and then the courage to act in another decision, and then the courage to act in another decision. And you just keep going for that one more. That's why Ed Milet talks about that power of one more. If you can just get, he talked about his dad and I think it was drinking or smoking. I can't remember which one. But he's like, all I have to do is just not have that drink for just one day. If I can just do it for one day, that's all I got to do. But then you do that same thought exercise every single day, and before you know it, he's been sober for, decades. Okay? All right, so I got some questions. Again, floated this around, made some posts on social media, got some good DMs. What if I don't know what I want? And I think I covered this a little bit earlier, but I'll refresh it here. What if I don't know what I want? If you don't know what you want, you certainly know what you don't want. So start looking at the areas, create the gaps of what it is that you don't want. And then sometimes through, taking the complete opposite, Costanza-ing it, right, from Seinfeld, do the opposite, then that might look like what you want. And so use that as a way in order to try to figure out the things that you do want by taking and looking at what are the things that you don't want. Question 2, what if it's uncomfortable to address? This is probably going to be true, because if it was comfortable to address, you probably would have done it already. But the things that makes us uncomfortable, we try to push off. All those resistances, it works, I'll do it later. It's because it's uncomfortable, and we either work towards pleasure or away from pain. And so in this one, knowing that whatever thing that it is might be uncomfortable, you're trying to work your way out of it. So the way that you work your way out of it is by rationalizing why where you're at today is A-okay. So it will be uncomfortable. But so much of life is uncomfortable. And when you learn to look at that says, not everything's going to be rosy. There's going to be days, there's going to be months, there's going to be seasons where it's just a drag-out dogfight. But you get through it. And sometimes that means you got to reach out to some people. Sometimes it might mean that you don't have the strength in yourself, so you got to go call on somebody to go get that strength. But just knowing that it's uncomfortable, face into it and just say, this is uncomfortable. This is going to be a hard conversation, but I'm going to do it anyway. A quick side story. We hit 60 degrees, can't remember when it was. I think it was maybe Friday, beautiful day. So when it gets warm out, I have a higher chance of getting into the cold bath, which is 50 degree water. So cold. It's not 32 freezing, but it is cold. My body doesn't really feel the difference. It's cold, so it just feels uncomfortable. And I told Amber, and I thought about making a post on this, and I completely forgot until just right now. But it was I was super uncomfortable. I didn't want to go do it. I knew I should go do it. I didn't want to go do it, but I did it. And for those 2 minutes, it was uncomfortable central. It was just awful. But after those 2 minutes, I got out, and all of a sudden, I could feel the inflammation go away. I had tight muscles that were no more. I felt tensions just ease away. The tensions in my shoulder from stress, just kind of went away. And so, to me, it was a perfect analogy, because was it uncomfortable? Heck yeah, it was. Did I not want to go do it for the 2 minutes that I was in there? Absolutely. But on the other side of it, I knew that it was going to be okay. I wasn't going to die in that ice bath for 2 minutes, right? And if I started feeling weird, I could just stand up. Not a big deal. But what I gained on the after effects was well worth it. And so that might be another way of looking at that. That if it's uncomfortable to address, just think about that ice bath, or go think about something that you have done in your life that had been uncomfortable, but you did it anyway. And when you did it, what did you feel on the other side? Did that uncomfortableness stay? Or is it a thing of the past? You don't even really think about. Like, I don't think about the cold water anymore. It was days ago, right? There's plenty of other stuff to fill my head. Many other tabs and rabbit holes to fall down. Next question. What if the other person doesn't change? Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. And if they don't, go back to the relationship episode. Sometimes people are waiting for you to change so that they can change. Sometimes that's all it takes. And sometimes that works. But if the person really doesn't change, then have an honest conversation about it. Hey, why aren't you wanting to change? And if they say, like, because I don't value, it might come out, well, I don't respect you, I don't value you, this isn't the right relationship for me. It's very hard. Go back to uncomfortable. Very hard and uncomfortable. But is it better to be comfortable? Is it better to be mildly uncomfortable forever, or to have bouts of highly uncomfortableness followed by seasons of fully comfortable and full pleasure? Right? That's a risk-reward thing. But everyone's going to go through it. So it's not, and people have gone through it. You've gone through much worse, and you've survived. The next one, what if I've tolerated it for years? Then that just means I'm with you. I tolerated the truck for 6 years, having hard shifts, feeling like I didn't want to drive anybody around because I was embarrassed about the truck. Now I'm like night and day difference. I'll drive anybody for however long, for wherever we need to go. It shows a much more authentic version of you. And that's part of your story. And what you tolerated, use that as motivation for yourself to do it for the next thing in your life. And also share it. You know, if you want to share your story, reach out. I'd love to have it on the podcast. But those things that you tolerate turns into great stories, because everybody tolerates things. And sooner or later, you got to drop the chains. You got to drop the weight of the things that you've tolerated and say, it's enough is enough, and it's time to move on. So with that, I just wanted to close things down. You won't notice that erosion while it's still living inside of you. So another interesting thing to ponder and think about. But one day you'll see what was possible. So I hope you guys that are listening to this, we just had crossed over 7,500 downloads. So super blessed, super humble, super appreciative of everybody taking time to listen, to hopefully getting some value from this. If you have, leave a comment or leave a review on the podcast. I think the last review was probably 5 years ago, but now that we're back in it again, I'd love and appreciate to hear from you, whether that's a review on the podcast, whether that's reaching out via DM, or if it's just sharing your wins. I'd love to hear and see when guys are really rising up and showing to be more and do more in the world. Because honestly, I think our time of sleeping and letting the world walk on and try to shape men, it's time to end. That cycle needs to end, and it's time for us to start raising ourselves back up and figuring out what it means to serve more, to be more, and to have a higher purpose or a higher calling. So things for this week: identify that one toleration, address it this week, and if you do, tag me in a post if you're talking about it. Reach out and DM me if nothing else. And with that, we'll close for today. So happy Tuesday, happy March, and until next time, keep moving forward.